Hey, it's James here from goodguitarist.com, and this time I want to show you how to play walking bass lines or walk-ups and walk-downs in the key of A, which is an awesome key for this technique. Since we have access to lots of open strings, we can do some really cool stuff. If you haven't already seen it, I taught a lesson for walk-ups and walk-downs in the key of C. I'll put a link in the corner for that. And if you're not familiar with the concept, a walking bass line is a musical device used to travel from one chord to the next. So it's heavily dependent on the chord progression. The chord progression is like the canvas, and the walking bass lines are what we paint on it, right? Most of the time, we find walk-ups and walk-downs in country, folk, and blues songs, which tend to gravitate towards a 1-4-5 chord progression or some variation of that. And I'll keep the theory as simple and as brief as possible. For this lesson, for our chord progression, we're in the key of A, and that makes A the 1 chord. We write out the A major scale. A is 1, and then we keep counting. A, B, C, D. D is 4, and then E is 5. So in the key of A, we have A, D, and E major as the 1, 4, and 5 chords. And if you're not familiar with those shapes, with A, D, and E, I have plenty of lessons covering that stuff and everything else that it takes to master the basics in my free ebook and all the accompanying tutorials that come with it. I'll put a link in the corner for that if you haven't gotten your copy yet. It's 100% free for all my subscribers, so grab your copy in the corner. Either way, we take that 1, 4, and 5, A, D, and E, and we arrange them into a progression, and we can use that as our canvas for our walk-ups and our walk-downs. We're going to play it with a super simple strumming pattern. And let's just try that strumming pattern plus that chord progression as a quick warm-up, because we're going to need it for our walk-downs. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I have all of this written down on a worksheet on my Patreon page if you want a printable copy of everything that we're covering in this lesson. It also comes with the backing tracks that you're going to hear me using throughout this lesson, a slow version and a fast version. So please check that out, link down below. The first one that I want to show you is so classic. It's something that you'd find in so many country and folk tunes like Walk the Line, and it goes like this. So the walks help us travel from chord to chord. First, we go from A to D. We play. So we play the open A string 2 times. Then I put my first finger on the 2nd fret of the A string. And then I use my ring finger or my pinky to play the 4th fret of the A string. And then I land on my D chord. And remember, our strumming pattern starts with the root, so I just have to play the root of the D chord, the D string. So let's try that with some counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And our walking bass line replaces the strumming for the 2nd measure of A. It fits perfectly in there since a measure is 4 beats and our bass line has 4 notes. So with our 2 measures of A, we strum the 1st measure and we walk during the 2nd measure, and then we land on the D chord. So let's try all of that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to walk back down from D to A. It goes like this. So we start on the D string, we play it 2 times, the open D string, and then I'm going to play the same notes that I played before but in reverse. So the 4th fret of the A string, and then the 2nd fret of the A string. And I land on the A chord playing just the root. All in all, from the D string, 1, 2, 3, 4. And once again, we're strumming 1 measure of D, and then we are walking during the 2nd measure of D, and it all lines up the same way. Let's try it together nice and slow. 1, 2, 3, 4. Next, we're going to go from A down to E, and this is the exact same walk down as D to A that we just did, but on a different string. It goes like this. So I start on the A string, I play it 2 times, and then on the E string, 4, 2, and then I make my E shape and I play the root to, get into what the strumming pattern is going to be like. Let's try that with some strumming now. 2, 3, 4. Finally, we're going to finish the cycle by walking from E up to A. And this is going to be just like the walk up from A up to D that we started with. It goes like this. So it's the same thing, but just on the thicker strings. We start on the open E string, O, O, and then I play the 2nd fret with my middle finger because when I'm coming out of the E chord, it works better that way. And then pinky finger on the 4th fret. But you could totally do that fingering too, up to you. And then we land on the A. And then we'll add some strumming. 1, 2, 3, 4. So out of all that, even though there are 2 walk-ups and 2 walk-downs, the walk-ups are nearly the same, and the walk-downs are almost the same. So you really only have to learn one of each to get through the whole thing. And I want you to practice each of them separately. And I have all this, the tab, instructions, everything, written out on a worksheet on my Patreon page. If you'd like a printable copy for your convenience, there's a link below for that, if you want to spend some more time working on that. But once you've, practiced each of those separately, we can put them all together nice and slow. Walking bass line that I want to show you is pretty similar, but we'll be adding some passing tones, which are notes from outside the key, and they're going to give it more of a bluesy flavor, because I don't want to inundate you with theory, but we basically use the flat 3 and the flat 7 of the key, which are really tense, bluesy or jazzy notes. So we're using the same chord progression. Our first walk is going to take us from A to D. It goes like this. So I start off on the A string and I go O, 2, 3, 4, and then I land on my D chord. Let's try it together slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4. O, 2, 3, 4, D. And we're going to incorporate it into our progression the exact same way. 1, 2, 3, 4. And walking back down from D to A, it goes like this. So we start out on the open D string, and then on the A string we go 3, 2, 1, and we land on our A chord. And for the fingering, you could go with your ring finger 3, 2, 1, but coming from the D chord, I like to go with my middle finger on 3, index on 2, then I slide it to the first fret. That works a little bit easier for me, but it's totally up to you. We'll play it together slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4. And adding some strumming. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to walk from A down to E. The bass line goes like this. And that's pretty much the exact same thing that we just played, but on the lower strings. So we're starting out on the A string this time, A, and then on the thickest string, 3, 2, 1, and then we land on our E chord. So take a sec with that, and then we'll add our strumming. 1, 2, 3, 4. And finally, we're going to walk from E back into A, and we've already done this. We started with this one. It goes like this. Adding some strumming to that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Once again, break that up into 4 parts, and once you've practiced each of those separately, we can put them all together. The final walking bass line that I want to show you goes like this. And this is an all-out jazz style walking bass line, like you'd see on an upright bass on like a swing and blues tune. First line goes like this. So we're actually jumping up an octave and then coming down into the D chord. We're starting out here on the 2nd fret of the G string, and that's the note A. That's the octave that we're talking about. And we're just going to go 2, O, and then on the D string, 2, 1, and then we land on our D chord. So all together, 2, O, 2, 1, O, landing on D. And when we add the strumming to that, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to go from D to A. And once again, we're reversing it. We're going from D up into A by leaping below it. So let's take a look at that. We're starting out on D, on the open D string, and then we go to the 2nd fret of the thickest string, 2, 3, 4, and then we land on A. So 1, 2, 3, 4, D, 2, 3, 4, A. And when we add strumming to that, 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we're going to go from A up into E. We're starting out on the open A string, O, 4, and then on the D string, O, 1, And then I'm landing with my ring finger on the 2nd fret because that gets me ready for my E chord. And the landing, if you haven't noticed by this point, the landing is the first beat of our strumming pattern. So when we go to strum that E, we've already played the first note up here instead of playing the root down here. So, that replaces the root of our strumming pattern. Just the line, nice and slow. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then with some strumming. 1, 2, 3, 4. And finally, we're going to go from E down into A. And this is just like when we went from A down into D. It goes like this. So from our E chord, we're going to be playing the octave, which is right here on the D string, the 2nd fret of the D string, played by our ring finger. And then open, and then on the A string, 2, 1, and then we land on our A chord. So that all together, 1, 2, 3, 4. And with some strumming, 1, 2, 3, 4. And when you're ready, we'll put it all together. So those are 3 walking bass line progressions in the key of A. All in all, there's something like 12 different walking bass lines there. If you want a written copy of all this, it's on my Patreon page. I'll put a link in the description for that. Finally, if you haven't gotten your copy of my free ebook, I'll put a link in the corner. It's 100% free for all my subscribers. With that said, I hope you enjoyed the lesson. Have a fun time practicing, and we'll see you soon.